The maesters tell us that Aegon came to Westeros with fire and blood, and hammered 6 kingdoms into one. Fire he undoubtedly brought, as the kings of the Rock, Reach, and Iron Islands learned. Aegon's own son, Maegor the Cruel, was killed by the very Iron Throne his father had forged, if you believe the tales. If you don't, then perhaps the Cruel is not a wise name for a king to earn. Daeron, first of his name, tried to finish his ancestors' work and bring Dawn into the fold. For his efforts, he lost 60,000 men and his own life of 18 years. During the Great Targaryen Civil War, known as the Dance of the Dragons, a king and queen each vied for the throne, dividing their house and its dragons against each other. By the war's end, King's Landing was smashed, cities razed and sacked, never to be rebuilt, and dragons had faded from this world.
For centuries, the Kingsguard had been the glory of the realm. Aegon the Conqueror had established the Order as his personal guardians after uniting Westeros with fire and blood. He knew that some of his subjects wouldn't take to conquest, and his dragons were no use against knives in the dark. No doubt surrounding himself with the greatest knights in Westeros made his rule more palatable and less foreign as well. Everyone in his kingdom soon knew the names and sung the songs of the Kingsguard. I certainly did from my earliest days.
There was one Kingsguard, I forgot the bastard's name, who swore an oath to his dying Targaryen king to crown his daughter after him. The very night that king died, this Kingsguard crowned the king's son instead. When an old man on the small council dared to protest, this honourable knight opened his throat. Bastard died in the very civil war he started, along with the old king's son, daughter, and most of their dragons. And the Kingsguard? All that duty and honour, and not enough brains to figure out which Targaryen to give it to. Twin brothers even ended up on opposite sides, died with tears on their cheeks as they cut each other down. I suppose I should think that's tragic, but stupid men do stupid things every day, and nobody cries over them.
As little more than a boy, Sir Criston Cole replaced the legendary Sir Ryan Redwine on the Kingsguard and soon rose to Lord Commander. But knights only know one way to settle disputes. When Prince Aegon's father died, Sir Criston slit the throat of an advisor who objected to Aegon's ascension over his aunt, the anointed heir. His actions so pleased the new king, Aegon, second of his name, that he appointed Sir Criston as his hand in the ensuing civil war, called the Dance of Dragons. Neither Sir Criston nor the king, nor even the Targaryen dragons would survive it.
The Targaryen dynasty united the 7 kingdoms and lasted nearly 3 centuries. It was a dynasty forged in fire, sealed in blood, and destroyed by rebellion. The Targaryens are blood of the dragon, descended from the nobility of ancient Valyria, a once mighty empire in the east. When the cataclysmic doom laid waste to Valyria and its people, the Targaryens survived, having settled on the island fortress of Dragonstone years before. They remained there for a century, until the rise of Aegon the Conqueror. Instead of attempting to reclaim the eastern lands of his ancestors, Aegon sailed west for the 7 kingdoms, his sisters Visenya and Rhaenys at his side. To keep the bloodlines pure, Aegon continued the custom of his Valyrian ancestors and took both of his sisters to wife. Together, they came ashore on the eastern coast of Westeros, their blazon a dragon with 3 heads, representing Aegon and his sister wives. Their words, fire and blood. While their host was small in comparison to the armies of Westeros that awaited them, Aegon and his sisters had a secret weapon, the last of the dragons. He conquered every kingdom save Dawn, which eventually bowed to Targaryen rule a century later. He had the swords of his enemies melted down by the fiery breath of his dragon, Balerion the Black Dread, and forged into the Iron Throne. The capital city of King's Landing was built on the eastern coast, where Aegon and his sisters first came ashore. And Aegon ordered the construction of a royal castle on its highest hill, the Red Keep.
According to legend, House Targaryen survived the doom of Valyria thanks to Daenerys the Dreamer, who foresaw the calamity and convinced her father to flee their homeland. It could be true, the Targaryens were always a bit more.
12 years before the Doom, despite the sneers of his rivals, Aenar Targaryen abandoned the capital with his family. Legends claim that his daughter foresaw the destruction of the city in a dream. More likely, Aenar met with some mishap at court and chose exile over execution. He and House Targaryen slinked away to a dreary, remote, god-forsaken island. Forsaken no longer. With arts now lost to the world, we transformed a tiny outpost into Dragonstone, a fortress fit for the last dragon lords. Then Aenar's descendants settled into it like a tomb for their lost homeland. Until Aegon. When he looked east, he saw the past, old, tired, dead. But when he looked west, he saw the future. Gold in the ground, gold in the fields, and no dragons in the sky but his. He and his sisters, Rhaenys and Visenya, flew over the great continent, ostensibly visitors to a strange land. But when Aegon returned, he ordered construction of a massive table carved in the shape of Westeros, with all the notable rivers and mountains that they had seen. A personal map of the Seven Kingdoms, then ruled by 7 squabbling families. House Durrandon held the Stormlands from their seat at Storm's End, due south of Dragonstone. House Horror of the Iron Islands had also conquered and enslaved the Riverlands and ruled them from Harrenhal, a monstrous castle rising on the shore of the God's Eye. House Stark held the frozen wasteland of the north, the oldest, largest, and emptiest of the kingdoms. House Lannister held the Westerlands, the wealthiest kingdom, thanks to their gold mines. House Gardner held the Reach, the second wealthiest kingdom, thanks to their crops. House Arryn held the Vale, or rather the Vale held them. The mountains were impassable, except through the Bloody Gate, which had never been taken. House Martell held the deserts of Dorne, probably because no one else wanted them. Together, the 7 kingdoms made Westeros, a realm that wasn't yet a realm, ruled by great families who didn't know what greatness was. Aegon would teach them. With Dorne in the fold and the faith put in its place, none in Westeros were left to oppose my family. So we started opposing each other. In the Dance of Dragons, a Targaryen princess tried to steal her brother's throne. Thanks to her stupidity, most of our dragons died.
In its time, the Dragon Pit was a marvel of the world. Full-grown Targaryen dragons nested beneath its massive dome. And even on the darkest nights, the walls seemed to glow with the fire of the great beasts inside.
As had the site's previous occupant, the Sept of Remembrance, when Maegor the Cruel blasted it with dragon fire during morning prayers. The screams of the dying men echoed through King's Landing all day, and a pall of ash and smoke hung over the city for a week.
But as it dissipated, so too did the rebellion of the Faith Militant. The Sept of Remembrance faded from memory, and Maegor decided to replace a monument to the gods with a monument to his family, the Dragon Pit. For more than a century, the Targaryens housed their dragons in the Dragon Pit. But dragons are not horses to be stabled or hounds to be kennelled. With each generation, the dragons became less massive, less swift, less long-lived.
And less invulnerable. During the Dance of Dragons, 2 Targaryen factions killed a handful of their family's dragons while fighting each other. A frenzied mob even broke into the Dragon Pit and slaughtered the 5 dragons chained there, though the last managed to bring down the roof of the Great Dome on its assailants. The dragons never recovered their former strength or numbers. Perhaps their line had been too broken, or perhaps others intervened to break it further. But the last dragon grew no larger than a cat, and its death earned Aegon, third of his name, the epithet Dragonbane.